She can't even speak English. Get her out. Are you deaf, or did a cat eat your tongue?
Harper Adams silently watched her laugh. Victoria Cole angrily snatched the napkin from Harper's lap and threw it to the floor. Harper didn't move.
God, stupid pigs.
Victoria fanned her hand, then shoved Harper's plate aside. Silverware crashed. Wine bled across the white tablecloth. 80 guests. Silence. Then, laughter. Eleanor Cole looked away. Not in shame, in agreement.
You should go back to your muddy puddle and roll around there. Don't turn our party into a stinking pigsty.
Victoria leaned in, voice dropping.
You're nothing, dumbass.
Harper's hand trembled under the table. Her fingers clenched, then released. 30 minutes later, Victoria would have to pray that she hadn't said those words to Harper after hearing Harper's speech. This is the story of Harper Adams, the wife they never bothered to know. She can't even speak English. Get her out! Harper Adams silently watched her laugh. Victoria Cole angrily snatched the napkin from Harper's lap and threw it to the floor. Are you deaf? Or did a cat eat your tongue? Harper didn't move. God, stupid pigs! Victoria fanned her hand, then shoved Harper's plate aside. Silverware crashed. Wine bled across the white tablecloth. 80 guests. Silence. Then, laughter. Eleanor Cole looked away. Not in shame, in agreement. You should go back to your muddy puddle and roll around there. Don't turn our party into a stinking pigsty. Victoria leaned in, voice dropping. You're nothing, dumbass. Harper's hand trembled under the table. Her fingers clenched, then released. 30 minutes later, Victoria would have to pray that she hadn't said those words to Harper after hearing Harper's speech. 6 months earlier, Garrett Cole knelt on the kitchen floor of a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. No ring box, just a folded napkin with the words, "Will you let me be yours forever?" Harper laughed so hard she spilled her coffee. Then she cried. Then she said yes. They had met at a bookstore in Midtown. Harper was reading a French novel, in French. Garrett asked if she could recommend something. She answered in English, switched to French when the store owner joined the conversation, then took a call in Spanish without missing a beat. Garrett didn't fall in love with her languages. He fell in love with the way she listened, like every word mattered, in any tongue. But when the time came to meet his family, Harper made one thing clear. Don't tell them what I do. Garrett frowned. Why not? You work at the United Nations. That's not exactly something to hide. If they respect me, they'll ask. If they don't, no title will change how they see me. The first dinner at the Cole estate lasted 2 hours. Eleanor Cole asked Harper 3 questions. Where she grew up, whether she could cook, and if Garrett was sure about this. Not once did she ask what Harper did for a living. Victoria was worse. She walked past Harper twice without speaking. On the third pass, she stopped, looked Harper up and down, and said to Garrett, "She's quiet. That's her best quality, I guess." Richard Cole sat at the head of the table. He nodded at Harper once. That was it. No question, no curiosity, no effort. On the drive home, Garrett gripped the steering wheel hard enough to turn his knuckles white. "I'll tell them. They need to know who you are." Harper placed her hand on his arm. Calm, steady. No. If they can't be bothered to ask, they don't deserve to know. 6 months passed. Not a single Cole ever asked Harper Adams what she did for a living. Not one. And now, tonight, the family's 40th anniversary gala. Every chair, every guest, every glass of champagne was in place. The stage was set. They just didn't know it yet. The morning of the gala, Harper Adams sat in a glass-walled booth on the 38th floor of the United Nations headquarters in New York. A pair of headphones pressed against her ears. A microphone hovered 2 inches from her lips. On the screen in front of her, 14 diplomats argued over a resolution on refugee resettlement. The French delegate spoke first. Fast. Heated. His words tumbled over each other like rocks down a hill. Harper's voice followed. Smooth, measured, instant. She converted every phrase into English without pause, without filler, without a single stumble. Her tone matched his urgency, but carried none of his chaos. Then the Spanish delegate interrupted. Mid-sentence, no warning. Harper didn't blink. She shifted, French to Spanish to English, like a river splitting into 3 streams and still flowing the same direction. A junior interpreter in the back booth whispered to his partner, "How long has she been doing this?" 7 years. She started at 23, youngest in the department. She makes it look like breathing. That's the point. The Algerian delegate raised his hand. Arabic, formal, dense with legal terminology that most interpreters needed a glossary to navigate. Harper leaned closer to the mic. Her Arabic came out clean and precise, each syllable weighted exactly right. The delegate paused mid-argument, looked up at the interpreter's booth, nodded once. The kind of nod that meant, she understood me better than my own staff. For 2 hours, Harper moved between languages the way most people move between thoughts. Without effort, without friction, without anyone noticing the shift until it was already done. When the session ended, Sophia Ruiz, her colleague in the next booth, pulled off her headphones and stared. "How do you do that?" Harper shrugged. "Do what? Make 5 languages sound like one conversation." Harper smiled but didn't answer. She checked her phone, a text from Garrett. "Tonight's the night. Mom's already arranging the seating chart. Victoria picked your seat, far end of the table. Surprise." Harper typed back, "Perfect. I like corners." She packed her bag, changed in the restroom, trading her navy blazer and pressed trousers for a simple black dress. No jewelry except a thin gold chain her mother had given her at 18. She looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back could run a security council session in 4 languages before lunch. Tonight, she would sit at the far end of a table and be treated like she couldn't order a glass of water. She chose this, every time. Not because she was weak, because she was waiting. Outside the building, Harper flagged a cab. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror. Middle-aged, tired eyes, a small photo of 2 children taped to the dashboard. Behind the children, the skyline of Amman, Jordan. She greeted him in Arabic. "Good evening." The driver's eyes went wide. He turned around fully. "You speak Arabic?" "Enough to ask how your kids are doing." His name was Walid. His daughter had just started school in Queens. His son wanted to be a pilot. Walid hadn't spoken Arabic with a passenger in 4 years of driving this cab. His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. "Most people don't even look at me," he said. "They just say the address and stare at their phone." "I know the feeling," Harper said quietly. When they arrived at the Cole estate, Walid refused to take her money. She insisted. He insisted harder. They compromised. She paid the fare, but left a $100 tip folded under the sun visor. "For the pilot," she said. Walid pressed his hand to his chest and whispered a blessing in Arabic. "God bless you." Harper stepped out of the cab and looked up at the Cole mansion. Every window blazed with golden light. Valets in black lined the circular driveway. A string quartet played somewhere deep inside. The evening air carried the smell of old money and fresh gardenias. She straightened her dress, touched the gold chain at her throat, her mother's chain, and walked into a room full of people who had already decided she was nothing. Okay, real talk. 5 languages at the UN like it's breathing. And tonight they think she can't speak English? Oh, you are not ready for what's about to happen in that room. Harper Adams grew up in a 2-room apartment on the east side of Baltimore. The wallpaper peeled. The radiator clanked all winter. The front door had 3 locks because the neighborhood demanded. Her mother, Diane Adams, worked 3 jobs. Mornings at the hospital laundry, afternoons cleaning offices downtown, weekends behind the register at a gas station off Route 40. She came home smelling like bleach and sweat, her hands cracked from chemicals, her back bent from hours of standing. But every night, every single night, Diane turned on the radio. Not music. Stations. Foreign ones. French broadcasts from Montreal, Spanish news from Miami, BBC Arabic from London. The voices filled the apartment like smoke, curling into every corner. Harper was 7 the first time she asked, "Mama, what are they saying?" Diane looked at her daughter and said something Harper would carry for the rest of her life. "I don't know, baby, but if you learn their language, they can never pretend you don't exist." Harper didn't forget that. She couldn't. At 11, she walked into the Baltimore Public Library and checked out a French textbook. The librarian looked at her, a skinny black girl in a coat 2 sizes too big, and asked if she was sure. "I'm sure," Harper said. She taught herself French in 9 months, Spanish by 14. She picked up Arabic from a neighbor, an elderly Yemeni man named Mr. Saleh, who traded language lessons for the plates of food Diane sent over every Sunday. Japanese came later. A scholarship to Temple University. A linguistics professor who told her she had the rarest kind of ear, the kind that hears what people mean, not just what they say. By 23, Harper Adams was the youngest interpreter ever hired by the United Nations Secretariat. 5 languages, fluent in all of them. Not conversational, not survival level. Fluent. The kind of fluent where native speakers forgot she wasn't one of them. Diane never saw it. She died 2 months before Harper's first day at the UN. Heart failure. 51 years old. The gold chain Harper wore every day, the one she touched before walking into the Cole mansion, was the only thing her mother left behind. That and a sentence. They can never pretend you don't exist. The Cole estate sat on 11 acres of manicured land in Greenwich, Connecticut. Stone pillars framed the entrance. A fountain shaped like a lion spat water into a marble basin. 2 rows of black luxury cars lined the driveway like a motorcade. Harper stepped through the front door and felt the room shift. Not loudly, not obviously, just a slight turn of heads, a pause in conversations. The quiet recalibration that happens when someone enters a space and doesn't quite match it. Garrett was waiting by the foyer. He kissed her cheek and took her hand. "You look beautiful." "I look like a target," she whispered. He squeezed her fingers. "Stay close." But within minutes, Garrett was pulled away by his uncle, then a business partner, then a cousin who hadn't seen him since Christmas. Harper stood alone near the edge of the grand ballroom. 80-something guests moved around her like water around a stone. Victoria appeared first. She wore a floor-length silver gown, diamond earrings, and the kind of smile that warned you before it cut. "Oh, you came." Victoria looked Harper up and down. "That dress is brave." Harper said nothing. Victoria turned to a cluster of women nearby. "Everyone, this is Garrett's wife, Harper." She paused just long enough. "She's very quiet." The women smiled politely. One extended her hand. The rest didn't. Then the guest of honor arrived. Ambassador Jean-Pierre Marchand entered through the west doors with the quiet confidence of a man who had spent 30 years in rooms exactly like this one. Silver hair, navy suit, a pin on his lapel, the French tricolor crossed with the European Union flag. Richard Cole greeted him personally, a handshake that lasted 3 seconds longer than normal. This was the man Cole Corporation needed. A trade partnership with the European delegation could open doors worth hundreds of millions. Victoria saw her opportunity. She crossed the room in 4 strides, champagne in hand, smile locked in place. Victoria tried her best French, a rehearsed greeting, stiff and lifeless. The kind of French that comes from an expensive tutor and 0 real conversation. The ambassador smiled politely and thanked her in French. Then he switched to English, quickly, gracefully, the way people do when they want to spare you from yourself. Victoria's smile didn't crack, but her jaw tightened. A flush crept up her neck. Harper stood 12 feet away. She heard every word, every mangled vowel, every misplaced liaison. She could have stepped in, could have bridged the conversation in flawless French and made Victoria look gracious instead of foolish. She didn't. Garrett appeared beside her. He leaned in. "You could help her, you know." Harper took a sip of water. She didn't ask. She wouldn't. Exactly. Garrett shook his head with a small smile. The kind that said, I married the most stubborn woman alive and I wouldn't change a thing. Across the room, Ambassador Marchand excused himself from Victoria and began circulating. He stopped to greet a Japanese trade attaché, then a group of Spanish investors. His path through the room was deliberate, a man reading the map of who mattered. At one point, he passed within 3 feet of Harper. Their eyes met. He slowed for half a second. His brow lifted, just slightly, the way it does when you recognize someone but can't place where. Then he moved on. Harper watched him go. She set her water glass down on the nearest table. Her fingers were steady. Her pulse was not. The evening was just beginning, and the people in this room had no idea what they were standing next to. Victoria didn't waste time. The moment the ambassador walked away, she gathered her circle. 3 women who had known the Cole family since boarding school. They stood near the bar, champagne in hand, voices low but not low enough. I'm telling you, Victoria said, she barely finished high school. Look at her, standing there like a lost puppy. A woman in emerald earrings leaned in. What does she even do? Victoria snorted. Does it matter? She married Garrett for the name. That's the only move she had. She's pretty, I'll give her that, said another. Pretty doesn't last, and pretty doesn't mean she can hold a conversation at this table. Victoria swirled her champagne. Garrett thinks he's being noble, progressive, but everyone sees it. He married down, way down. The women nodded, not because they believed it, because agreeing with Victoria Cole was easier than disagreeing. Across the room, Eleanor Cole stood within earshot. She held a glass of wine, posture perfect, face unreadable. She heard every word her daughter said. She corrected nothing, defended no one. Silence, in that family, was its own kind of vote. Harper didn't plan to overhear. She had walked toward the bar for water when Victoria's voice cut through like a blade through silk. She can't even order from a menu. Garrett probably has to point at pictures for her. Laughter, sharp and careless. Harper stopped mid-step. Her back was to them. They didn't see her face. She heard every word, every laugh, every pause that said more than the words themselves. She picked up her water, took a slow sip. Her hand didn't shake, but her knuckles went white around the glass, the only part of her body that told the truth. She turned and walked toward the balcony. The night air hit her like cold water on a burn. The terrace overlooked the Cole gardens, hedgerows trimmed into geometric shapes, stone paths lit by ground lanterns, a distant fountain beyond the trees. Jazz drifted from inside. A saxophone, something slow and aching. Harper set her glass on the stone railing, breathed in, held it, let it go. This wasn't new. She'd been underestimated in 6 languages across 4 continents, by diplomats, by professors, by men in tailored suits who assumed a black woman with no famous last name couldn't possibly belong in their room. She always proved them wrong. Always. But tonight was different. These weren't strangers in a conference hall. This was her husband's family, the people who were supposed to become hers, and they hadn't bothered to learn her name before deciding she was nothing. Garrett found her 10 minutes later. He stepped onto the balcony, loosening his tie. One look at her face and he knew. What did she say? It doesn't matter. Harper. It doesn't matter, Garrett. He leaned on the railing beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. I'll tell them. Right now. I'll walk in there and tell every single person who you are. Harper looked at him, calm, steady, the same eyes that held 5 languages without flinching. No, if they want to know me, they'll ask. If they don't, a title won't change a thing. Garrett opened his mouth, then closed it. She was right. They both knew it. From inside, a microphone squealed. Then Richard Cole's voice, amplified and warm. Before we sit for dinner, I'd like each member of the family to offer a toast. Harper's fingers tightened around the railing. Garrett looked at her. You don't have to. She didn't answer. but something shifted behind her eyes. Quiet and final. Like a decision made in a room no one else could enter. The crisis started with a dropped phone call and a misheard number. Somewhere between the appetizers and the second round of champagne, a group of 3 Spanish investors cornered one of Richard Cole's junior executives near the East Wing. The investors had flown in from Madrid that morning, specifically for this gala, to finalize the terms of a joint venture worth $12 million. The problem was simple. The interpreter Cole Corporation had hired for the evening was stuck on the Cross-Bronx Expressway, 40 minutes out, maybe more, and the investors were losing patience. The lead investor, a man named Alejandro Vega, spoke rapidly in Spanish to his colleagues. His hands moved as he talked, sharp, frustrated gestures. The junior executive stood in front of them with a frozen smile, nodding at words he didn't understand. Vega muttered to his partner in rapid Spanish, "They're not taking us seriously." His partner fired back, "We should leave. This is disrespectful." The third investor was already reaching for his coat. Victoria saw it from across the room. She didn't understand the Spanish, but she understood the body language. Men putting on jackets at a party meant one thing. The deal was walking out the door. She grabbed the junior executive by the arm. "What is happening? Why are they leaving?" I can't understand them, Ms. Cole. The interpreter hasn't arrived." "Then use your phone. Google Translate. Something." "I tried. They said it was insulting." Victoria's face went pale. $12 million. Her father would never let her forget it. Harper was walking past the East Wing on her way back from the balcony. She wasn't looking for trouble. She wasn't looking for anything. But she heard Vega's voice, clear, fast, agitated, and her feet stopped before her mind caught up. Vega spoke in Spanish, his voice sharp. "We're leaving. Tell Mr. Cole to find partners who respect our time." Harper turned, looked at the 3 men, looked at Victoria's panicked face, looked at the junior executive drowning in silence. She stepped forward. She spoke in Spanish, fluid, warm, Madrid inflected. "Mr. Vega, please, give me just a moment." Every head turned. Vega's hand froze on his coat sleeve. Not the stilted, classroom kind of Spanish, the kind that told a native speaker, "This woman has lived inside this language." She explained the delay. She apologized on behalf of the host. She asked about the flight from Madrid, about whether the hotel had treated them well, about Vega's daughter, whom she'd read about in a profile in El País 6 months ago. Vega stared at her. Then he laughed. A real laugh. Not polite, not guarded. The kind that breaks tension like sunlight through clouds. Vega asked in Spanish, grinning, "Who are you?" Harper smiled. "A guest, like you." Within 3 minutes, the coats were off. The investors were seated. The terms of the deal were being discussed again, in fluent, precise Spanish, with Harper bridging every word. Victoria watched from 10 feet away, arms crossed, face tight. The flush from the ambassador incident had returned, darker this time. When the conversation ended, Vega shook Harper's hand with both of his. He spoke in Spanish, his voice warm. "Ma'am, you saved this evening." Victoria uncrossed her arms. Anyone can learn a few phrases from Google Translate. Vega looked at her, then back at Harper. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. From the far side of the room, Richard Cole watched. He had seen the whole thing, the investors reaching for their coats, Harper stepping in, the handshake at the end. He set down his glass, pulled out his phone, and typed a name into the search bar. Harper Adams. The results would keep him reading for the next 20 minutes. Ambassador Jean-Pierre Marchand found Harper before she found him. She was standing near the garden doors, refilling her water glass, when a voice behind her spoke in French. "Excuse me, madame. We've met before, haven't we?" Harper turned. The ambassador stood 3 feet away. His eyes were narrowed, not suspicious, searching. "I don't think so," Harper said, in English, carefully. Marchand tilted his head. "No, I'm certain. Your face. I've seen it. Behind glass. He paused. Then his eyes widened. The interpreter's booth. The Security Council. Last March. The session on the Syria ceasefire. Harper said nothing. It is you. Marchand stepped closer. His voice dropped, not to hide, but out of genuine surprise. Madam Adams, you interpreted for 7 delegates in a 4-hour session, French, English, Arabic, without a single pause. The Algerian delegate told me afterward that your Arabic was better than his translator in Geneva. Harper allowed herself a small smile. He was being generous. He was being accurate. Marchand switched to French, fluid, fast, the kind of French that tested whether the other person could keep up. Harper matched him, word for word, clause for clause. They spoke in French about the ceasefire, about the politics behind the resolution, about a phrase the French delegate had used, a fragile peace, that Harper had translated not literally, but as a piece held together by thread. Marchand had remembered that choice. It had changed how the English-speaking delegates understood the gravity of the moment. That single phrase, Marchand said, still speaking in French, shifted the tone of the entire afternoon session. Translation is not just language, Madam Adams. It is diplomacy by other means, and you are one of the finest I have ever worked with. 2 guests standing nearby overheard. They didn't speak French, but they recognized the tone. The ambassador of France was not making small talk. He was paying respect. One of them leaned to the other and whispered, "Who is she?" The whisper carried. Heads turned. Not many, but enough. Victoria noticed. She had spent the first half of the evening trying to hold Marchand's attention with rehearsed pleasantries and a boarding school accent. Now the ambassador stood in a corner, deep in animated conversation with the woman Victoria had called mute. The woman she had said couldn't order from a menu. Victoria's champagne glass paused halfway to her lips. Her smile thinned to a line. She turned to Eleanor. "What are they talking about?" Eleanor didn't answer right away. She watched Harper and the ambassador. 2 people speaking a language she couldn't follow, sharing a world she couldn't enter. "I don't know," Eleanor said quietly. And for the first time that evening, her voice carried something other than indifference. It carried doubt. Victoria set her glass down hard enough to clink against the marble bar top. "I don't care who she thinks she is." Her voice was low, controlled, but her eyes burned. "When the toasts start, I'll remind everyone exactly where she belongs." She turned and walked toward the stage. Her heels struck the floor in sharp, deliberate beats, the sound of a woman building a weapon out of words. She had no idea she was building her own ruin. Harper needed air. Not the balcony kind, the real kind. The kind that didn't come with jazz music and the sound of people pretending. She slipped through a side door and followed a stone path into the garden. The noise of the gala faded behind her. Hedgerows rose on both sides. Ground lanterns cast soft circles of gold on the gravel. The air smelled of jasmine, thick and sweet, the way summer smells when it's trying to apologize for the heat. She heard the crying before she saw the woman. Tucked on a stone bench behind a wall of boxwood, half hidden by shadow, sat a small woman in a gray uniform. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her shoulders shook. She was trying to be silent about it, the way people cry when they've learned that no one comes when they make noise. Harper stopped. She spoke in Japanese, her voice gentle. "Excuse me, are you okay?" The woman looked up. Her eyes went wide, not from fear, from shock. You speak Japanese?" Harper sat beside her on the bench. Not too close. Close enough. Her name was Fumiko Tanaka. She had worked as the Cole family's housekeeper for 15 years. She cooked. She cleaned. She organized every event, including tonight's gala. She pressed the tablecloths, polished the silverware, arranged 80 place settings by hand. And in 15 years, not one member of the Cole family had ever spoken to her in her own language. Not one had asked where she was from. Not one had said her name correctly. "They call me Fumi," she said, "like it's too much trouble to say the rest." Harper didn't respond right away. She sat with the silence, let it breathe. Then she spoke in Japanese, soft and unhurried. My mother used to say something. She said language isn't just words. It's the way you tell someone, I see you. You're not invisible. Fumiko's lip trembled. She pressed her hands together harder. 15 years, she whispered. You're the first person in this house who ever spoke to me like I'm a person. Harper reached over and placed her hand on Fumiko's. Gently. The way her mother used to, when Harper came home from school with bruises she didn't want to explain. They sat together for a long moment. No words, just jasmine and crickets, and the distant sound of a party neither of them quite belonged to. Then a sound cut through the garden, the sharp whine of a microphone being tested. A voice from inside. We'll begin the toasts in 5 minutes. Harper stood, smoothed her dress, touched the gold chain at her throat. Fumiko looked up at her. Will you go back in there? Harper smiled. Small, certain. Yes, and this time, they're going to hear me. The toasts began at 9:15. Richard Cole went first. Short, measured. A man who had built an empire by saying less than everyone expected. He thanked the guests. He thanked his wife. He raised his glass to 40 years of Cole Corporation and sat back down. Eleanor spoke next. Gracious, rehearsed. She mentioned family, legacy, the importance of standards. Her eyes never once found Harper. Then Victoria stood. She didn't walk to the microphone. She glided. Silver gown catching the chandelier light, diamond earrings swinging with each step. She took the mic from the stand with the confidence of a woman who had never been told no in a room that mattered. Thank you all for being here tonight, she began. Her voice was warm, almost sweet. The kind of sweet that comes right before the knife. This is a night about family, about legacy, about what it means to carry the Cole name. She paused, let the room settle. And I think it's only fair to talk about what that name means, and who gets to carry it. Her eyes found Harper, locked on, didn't let go. My brother Garrett is a wonderful man, generous, kind, maybe too kind. She smiled. The crowd gave a polite laugh. He brought someone into our family this year, someone different. The word hung in the air like smoke. I tried to welcome her, I really did. But it's hard to have a conversation with someone who, and I say this with love, can't even speak English without stumbling over every other word. A few nervous laughs, a few glances toward Harper's seat. Some guests looked down at their plates. Victoria pressed on, louder now. Let's not pretend, everyone. She doesn't belong here. She doesn't understand our world. She doesn't understand this table. And honestly, Victoria raised her glass. I don't think she understands a single word I'm saying right now. Laughter. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to fill the room, enough to make it real. Garrett shot to his feet. His chair scraped the floor. His face was white with fury. Harper reached up and caught his hand. Firm, calm. Sit down. Harper, sit down. He looked at her. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't crying. She was something else entirely. Something he had seen only once before, during a Security Council session, when a delegate had screamed at her through the glass and she had translated every word without blinking. She was locked in. Harper stood. The room went quiet. Not the polite quiet of attention, the airless quiet of a held breath. She walked to the stage, each step deliberate, each step echoing on the marble floor like a slow drumbeat. Victoria still held the microphone. Harper stopped in front of her, extended her hand, and waited. Victoria laughed. Oh, this should be good. She handed over the mic. Harper turned to face the room. 80 guests, crystal glasses, chandelier light, every eye. She began in English. Clear, steady, no tremor. Thank you, Victoria, for that introduction. A pause. I'd like to offer my own toast, if the family will allow me. Silence. Richard nodded once from the head of the table. Harper continued. The Cole family has built something extraordinary over 40 years. This company, this legacy, this room full of people who believe in what you've created. She looked at Richard. I respect that. Deeply. Then she shifted, without warning, without translation, into French. She turned to the ambassador and spoke directly to him in his own language. Ambassador Marchand, I want to thank you personally. Your commitment to diplomacy and peace is an inspiration. Tonight, I am honored to share this table with you. Marchand's glass stopped mid-air. His eyes glistened. He bowed his head slightly. A murmur rippled through the room. Guests exchanged looks. Victoria's smile vanished. Harper turned to the Spanish investors, shifted again, this time into Spanish. Mr. Vega, gentlemen, thank you for your trust tonight. The best partnerships are not built with contracts. They are built with respect. Vega pressed his hand to his chest, the same gesture Walid had made in the cab. The investor beside him whispered in Spanish to the man next to him. Who is this woman? The room was no longer murmuring. It was silent. The kind of silence that happens when people realize they are witnessing something they will talk about for years. Harper turned again, this time toward the side of the room, toward a gray uniform standing near the kitchen doorway. She spoke in Japanese, soft, unhurried, every syllable placed with care. Fumiko, for 15 years you have given everything to this house. No one called your name, but I will. You are not invisible. I see you. Fumiko's hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. A guest at the nearest table covered her own eyes. Another reached for a napkin. Victoria hadn't moved. Her face had gone from red to white. Her champagne glass trembled in her fingers. Harper turned back to the full room. She switched one final time. Arabic, formal, resonant. Do not judge people by their appearance. The language you do not understand may be the one that saves you. The last words settled over the room like a stone dropping into still water. No one moved. No one breathed. I swear, the way she stood there, no notes, no script, 5 languages back to back, and every word landed exactly where it needed to. Victoria looked like the ground just disappeared under her feet. I need to re-watch this moment forever. Victoria's champagne glass tilted. Wine ran down her wrist. She didn't notice. Richard Cole pushed back his chair. He rose to his feet, slowly. The room held its breath. And then he began to clap. One man, one sound, echoing off marble walls. Then another pair of hands joined, then another, then the whole room, 80 guests, on their feet, applauding a woman they had ignored for 6 months. Harper stood at the microphone. She didn't bow. She didn't smile. She looked at Victoria, one long, steady look, and set the microphone gently back on the stand. Then she walked back to her seat. At the far end of the table, the seat Victoria had chosen for her. And for the first time that night, no one in that room thought she was sitting too far away. The applause didn't stop. It rolled through the ballroom in waves, starting from the back tables, moving forward, building until the chandeliers seemed to vibrate with it. 80 guests on their feet, some clapping hard, some wiping their eyes, a few doing both. Richard Cole stood at the head of the table. He hadn't sat back down. His hands were still together, clapping in slow, deliberate beats. The kind of applause that wasn't performance. It was verdict. He stepped away from his chair and walked toward the stage. The room quieted. When Richard Cole moved, people paid attention. 40 years of building an empire had earned him that. He took the microphone. I've been in business for 4 decades, he said. His voice was low, measured, the voice of a man who chose every word the way a surgeon chooses instruments. In that time, I've sat across from presidents, from board chairs, from people who run countries, and I've learned one thing. He paused, looked out at the room. The loudest person in the room is rarely the smartest, And the person you overlook is usually the one you should have been listening to all along. His eyes found Harper. She was standing near her chair at the far end of the table. Still, quiet. The same way she'd been all night. Except now, the room saw it differently. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was patience. "My daughter-in-law has been a part of this family for 6 months," Richard continued. "In that time, not one of us, and I include myself, not one of us had the basic decency to ask her what she does for a living." The room shifted. Guests glanced at each other. A few looked at their shoes. "So I did what I should have done months ago. I looked her up." Richard pulled his phone from his jacket pocket, not to read from it, just to hold it. Evidence. Harper Adams is a senior interpreter at the United Nations Secretariat. She has been for 7 years. She speaks 5 languages fluently. She has interpreted for heads of state, Security Council sessions, and international crisis negotiations. He let that settle. The silence in the room was so complete you could hear the ice shifting in water glasses. "My son didn't marry down." His voice hardened, not with anger, with certainty. "He married the most qualified person in this room, and none of us had the decency to ask." Ambassador Marchand rose from his seat. He didn't wait to be invited. He simply stood, buttoned his jacket, and addressed the room in English, clear, accented, commanding. "If I may, I have worked with Madame Adams directly. Last March, during a Security Council session on the Syrian ceasefire, she interpreted for 7 delegates over 4 hours, 3 languages, simultaneous, without a single error." He paused. Let the weight of that land. "The Algerian delegate told me afterward that her Arabic was more precise than his own delegation's translator in Geneva. I have been in diplomacy for 30 years. She is one of the finest interpreters I have ever encountered." He turned to Harper and inclined his head. A diplomat's bow. Small, but unmistakable. The room was no longer just listening. It was watching the way people watch a verdict being read, knowing it cannot be undone. Alejandro Vega stood next. He didn't wait either. The room was building its own momentum now, a tide that couldn't be held back. "This woman saved our deal tonight," Vega said. His English was accented but firm. "We were leaving. $12 million. Gone. She walked over, spoke to us in perfect Spanish, and in 3 minutes convinced us to stay." He looked at Victoria, then looked away. "She showed us more respect in 3 minutes than we received all evening." 3 sources, 3 independent confirmations. Diplomat, Investa, father-in-law. Each one a pillar, together a wall that no amount of gossip, no amount of champagne-fueled cruelty could ever break through. The room buzzed. Guests leaned to each other. "Did you know?" "I had no idea." 5 languages? The United Nations? The whispers layered over each other like wind through leaves, quiet individually, deafening together. Victoria stood near the bar, alone. Her circle of friends had quietly dispersed, the way people drift from a sinking ship without making it obvious. Her champagne sat untouched on the marble counter. Her face carried the expression of someone watching their own reflection crack in real time. She tried, one last time. "I was just joking earlier." Her voice came out smaller than she intended, thinner. "Everyone knows that. It was just a joke." No one turned around. No one answered. The silence that met her was worse than any insult she had ever delivered, because it was the exact same silence she had forced on Harper all evening. And now she was drowning in it. Eleanor Cole moved first. She walked across the ballroom, slowly, deliberately, and stopped in front of Harper. For a long moment, she said nothing. She looked at the woman she had spent 6 months pretending didn't exist. Then she spoke, and for the first time, she used Harper's full name. "Harper Adams, I owe you an apology, a real one. Not for tonight, for every night before it." Harper looked at her mother-in-law. She didn't flinch, didn't soften too quickly, but she nodded, once. The kind of nod that said, "I hear you, we'll see." Richard stepped forward. He reached to his lapel and unpinned something. A small gold pin, shaped like the Coal Corporation logo. An interlocking C and C, no bigger than a thumbnail. Harper had seen it before. Garrett wore one. Victoria wore one. Eleanor had one on her clutch. It was the family's mark, given only to blood members and those Richard personally considered part of the inner circle. In 40 years, he had given out 11. He held it out to Harper. "Welcome to the family," he said. "The real welcome. The one you should have gotten on day one." Harper took the pin. She didn't look at it right away. She looked at Garrett, who stood 5 feet away, tears running down his face without apology. She looked at Fumiko, still at the kitchen doorway, both hands pressed over her heart, cheeks still wet. She looked at Ambassador Marchand, who raised his glass with a quiet, knowing smile. She looked at Vega, who pressed his hand to his chest the same way Walid had done in the cab. Then she looked down at the pin in her palm. Small, gold, warm from Richard's hand. Garrett crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. He didn't care about the guests. Didn't care about the cameras or the champagne or the whispers that had already turned to something else, something that sounded like regret. He held her and whispered into her ear, "They finally see you." Harper closed her eyes. Her fingers curled around the pin. "I was never hiding," she said. "They just never looked." Victoria Cole left the gala at 9:52. She walked out through the garden entrance, the same stone path Harper had taken an hour earlier to sit with Fumiko. No one followed her. No one said goodbye. No one noticed. Her heels clicked on the gravel, the same sharp, deliberate sound they had made earlier when she had walked toward the stage to tear Harper apart. But now the rhythm was different, faster, uneven, the sound of someone trying to outrun what they'd done. The last thing she heard before the heavy oak door closed behind her was the sound of the room, still applauding. Hashtag, don't judge her silence. The morning after the gala, Richard Cole called Harper into his study. It was a room she had never been invited to. Oak-paneled walls, a leather chair older than most of the guests from last night, and a window that looked out over the same garden where Harper had sat with Fumiko under the jasmine. The desk between them was wide and bare except for a single folder. Richard didn't waste time. "I want to offer you a position, Director of International Relations at Coal Corporation. You'd oversee all foreign partnerships, Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, Asia, full authority, full budget, your name on the door." Harper looked at the folder, then at Richard. "I appreciate that, I do, but I already have a job." Richard leaned back. "At the United Nations. At the United Nations, where I make people heard, where I sit between two sides that can't understand each other, and I build a bridge with nothing but words." She paused. "I'm not ready to leave that." Richard studied her, the same way he studied contracts, carefully, looking for what wasn't said. "Then consult, part-time, on your terms, name your conditions." Harper didn't answer right away. She looked out the window. The garden was quiet in the early light. A groundskeeper was trimming the hedgerows. Somewhere beyond the trees, a bird called once and went silent. "One condition," she said. "Name it." Coal Corporation establishes a language scholarship fund, full tuition, for children from underserved communities, kids who don't have access to language programs, who go to schools where foreign language is the first thing cut from the budget. She paused. "Kids like the one I was." Richard didn't blink. "Done. What do you want to call it?" Harper touched the gold chain at her throat. "The Diane Adams Language Fellowship." Richard wrote it down. No hesitation, no negotiation, just ink on paper, the same way he had built everything else in his life. "Your mother would be proud," he said. Harper didn't answer, but her eyes said what her voice couldn't. 1 year later, the Diane Adams Language Fellowship awarded its first round of grants. 200 children, 12 cities, French, Spanish, Arabic, Mandarin, Japanese. Every recipient received a full scholarship, a language mentor, and a letter, handwritten by Harper, that said the same thing. The world is bigger than the language you were born into. Go find the rest of it. Harper taught the first class herself. A Saturday morning session in a community center in East Baltimore, 6 blocks from the apartment where she had grown up. 14 kids sat in folding chairs, notebooks open, eyes wide. The room smelled like floor wax and instant coffee. She stood in front of them and said, "Who here has ever felt invisible?" Every hand went up. "Good," she said. "By the time we're done, you'll be impossible to ignore." Fumiko Tanaka left the coal estate 3 months after the gala. Not because she was fired, because she was hired. Harper recommended her to a Japanese cultural exchange program in Manhattan. Fumiko now ran the Welcome Center. Her name was on the door. The full name, every syllable. Eleanor Cole became the fellowship's most active board member. She attended every fundraiser. She wrote personal checks. She never once mentioned the gala, but everyone who knew her could see the change. It was quiet. It was real. And it had started the night her daughter-in-law spoke 5 languages, and she realized she had never learned to listen in one. Victoria sent a letter 4 months after the gala. 2 paragraphs, no excuses. The last line read, "I didn't just underestimate you. I refused to see you. I'm sorry." Harper read it twice, folded it, put it in a drawer beside her mother's chain. She never wrote back. But she didn't throw it away. Garrett asked her once, on a quiet Sunday over coffee, whether she had forgiven his sister. Harper looked at him, smiled. The kind of smile that holds more than it shows. "Forgiveness isn't a moment, Garrett. It's a direction. I'm walking that way. I'm just not there yet." The most powerful language in the world isn't French or Arabic or Spanish. It's the courage to speak when everyone expects you to stay silent. When was the last time you judged someone before you knew their story? Drop it in the comments. Share this with someone who's been underestimated. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Because stories like Harper's happen every day, and someone needs to tell them.